Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and looks like I have a weird delay going on with my screen today, so I'm not sure what's happening. Hopefully this won't continue, but at any rate, we have Jordan Maxwell, and we're going to do an update with Jordan tonight, and we're going to also do sort of an open lines where he can answer questions and all of that. So it should be a lot of fun, and going to bring him on the screen here. Jordan, it's great to have you here, and really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're working on all kinds of stuff. So thank you, again, for coming on the show. Can you hear us okay?
Well, thank you. Yes, I can hear you very good. I want to thank you too, Carrie, for you've always been very generous and always very supportive, and you're always there as a friend, and I just want to thank you for that, and I'm always delighted to be on your show. So where do we go from here? I don't know.
Well, what I'd like to do is basically, I wanted to give you a brief introduction because I know, people know who you are, but we never talk about your background, and I think you've got a really fascinating background. So I just want to see if I can skim through a bit of information here. Not sure if I'm going to be able to do it, though. My computer's going kind of slow. Do you want to, sorry about this, I was hoping to get your bio here on the screen. It's on my website for those listening. And Jordan, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into this whole field? Because I know we haven't covered that in quite some time, and it might be interesting for people to hear.
Yeah, I've always been, even as a small child, I have always been interested in secrets, all the dark stuff going on in the world that people don't talk about. And I grew up hearing, in the South, I began hearing people talk about, well, there are two things that we don't talk about, and that's religion and politics. And so they gave me to believe that the reason why you don't discuss religion and politics is because you don't want to offend other people who might be friends and people who would be there as your guests, and so you don't want to offend them. And maybe they're a different religion or a different political philosophy or something, and you might offend them. So therefore, we don't discuss politics or religion because it might offend someone. Well, that offended me because I want to talk about it. And so I didn't out of respect, but now that I'm older, I now know what the name of the tune is. Nobody wants to talk about religion and politics because that's the two places where all of the smell and the stink and the criminality and the evil is bubbling up. It's overwhelmed in religion and government with corruption, lies, deception, sex, drugs, criminality. And so that's why we don't want to talk about politics and religion, because we might offend someone. So we don't talk about those kind of things, criminality and all that dirty stuff. We don't talk about that in polite company. And so I grew up thinking, no, I'm going to talk about it in your face. And I don't care if you like it or not. It's about time somebody talks about the corruption that is eating and destroying our country and the world we live in. And so most people don't want to talk about such things. And therefore, thank God, such things can now continue to grow and blossom and get bigger and bigger, because nobody wants to talk about it. Well, it's about time now we look at the world and discover that the world we thought we lived in and the world that we thought we knew, now it's becoming overwhelmingly obvious to just about everyone. The way the world looks today was the way I saw it when I was like 10 years old. I saw it as corrupt, and adults were stupid. They didn't understand what I was. I mean, I would ask questions and they'd look at me like a deer in the headlights. And so I realized that adults are merely grown-up children. They are children just like we are, just like we were, but they're grown up. And so their bodies have grown up and their ideas have grown up, but their intellect has not grown up. They still have the same mind that a 6-year-old has. And so I realized as I was coming up through my teens that the world itself was under arrest. I used to think of it as being under arrest, where the world of mankind could not get out of its own way. It couldn't actually face problems and do something about them because you can't do that. You don't want to talk about these kind of things in public. And so now today we're finally talking about these kind of things in public, but it's way, way out of hand now. We should have talked about the stuff going on today. We should have talked about it, some 70 years ago, 100 years ago. We should have been talking about it. And of course, there were a few people. There were a few that were intellectually honest. And that is a big problem, intellectual honesty, because most people are not intellectually honest. They like to think they are, but they're not. They want to look the other way when there's uncomfortable problems that are popping up in your community and in your own life. And so when your children are finally on drugs and your marriage is falling apart and your government's corrupt beyond belief, and you got lawsuits and you go into prison, and when you finally wake up and all the trouble that humans are now in and get in every day, it's because we don't talk about these things in polite company. So therefore, adults don't know how to deal with life. They don't know what's going on. We just don't talk about it. So we just do the best we can and hope for the best. But the reason why Americans cannot change anything, we can cry and complain all you want, and you can bellyache all you want, but you're not going to change anything. And the reason why you're not going to be able to change anything is because you never have changed anything. And you're not changing anything now, and you're never going to change anything. And the reason why is very simple. You don't have the power to change things. The people who are in power, the elites who are in power, they are fascists, criminals, liars, and the whole entire superstructure of Western civilization's government, religion, foundations of our institutions like the military, the banking, our educational systems, it's all corrupt beyond belief. And now it's beginning to look like the people are finally beginning, slowly but surely, beginning to awaken to the fact that nothing in this world is what you think it is. It's been a lie from day one. All of our governmental structures don't work. They never have worked. And our religious systems are filled with lies and deception and incredible stories. And so we as a people just cannot do anything but just continue to plug along, trying to stay alive and do what we do, never realizing for a moment that our whole entire human system on the earth is corrupt beyond belief. And the reason why is because we humans are equally as corrupt. So we don't want to talk about unpleasant things. We want to talk about nice things like going to vacations and going to movies and entertainment and drinking beer and watching TV and the ball games and all those kind of things. Why? To take our mind off of the real world that we have to live in.
Okay, Jordan, I appreciate what you have to say there, but you know,
and I was going to follow it through, but go on. But we got to say.
Well, I just want to say that it is possible for one individual to change the world, and I think you yourself have proven this. And you've got a huge following out there. Camelot has a huge following. We've got a lot of people waking up, a lot of people attempting to change the paradigm on planet Earth. Some people feel that Trump is making an impact. I think that remains to be seen, whether he's what you call a limited hangout or he is actually going to change something. One of the things I object to is the notion that putting a few pedophiles in jail or even shooting them, as one of my witnesses thinks they're doing, is going to solve anything, because that is not going to cure the human race of pedophilia. It's a lot deeper than that. So I wondered if you had something to say about that.
Well, yes. I like to draw people's attention to the mundane world they live in, so that I can interest them in how the world works, because I enjoy explaining to people how banks work, how insurance companies work, and how governments work, and what the military is, and why do we have police, why do we have courts, why do you have the world you live in. And so that's why I try and draw people's attention to the fact that our everyday world that we live in, so many of us have no idea the world, how to explain it or how to understand it. We just do what we normally do to stay alive, and we just hope for the best. But there is something more important in this life, and it is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding on how things work. And once you realize the world does not work the way you think it does, then you begin to wake up and want to learn how and see what's going on. So that's what I try and do. I'm not saying these things to be unkind or to be a downer. I'm not talking about society as doomed, but I do believe that there has always been on this earth individuals who were spiritually enlightened enough to try and teach and help their fellow man to gain knowledge and to understand wisdom in the universe they live in. And they were great teachers. And almost all of the great teachers, especially the really important ones, died paupers. They were criticized and abused while they were alive, trying to help their fellow men. And so I've just made I have made a decision to point out all of the glaring inconsistencies in human society, and try and explain to people how the world they live in really works. Because unless you are prepared intellectually and spiritually for the world you're living in, too many people are dying out there on the streets. Young people are dying from drug overdose because they're bored. And I understand why they're bored. The schools are horrible. So no wonder young people are bored. My God, I was fascinated with life when I was a kid, because I was always going to libraries and reading and studying strange subjects that other people had no idea about. And so the more I've grown into this world, the more I realize there's so many incredible things to know about. The whole story of the UFO in relation to the human race, and how long we've had UFOs, and the alien presence on the earth, and the science of where the earth came from and where we're going as a human race. There's so many incredible things to study and to read and to know about and to open your mind. But I think it was Gurdjieff who once said that we're all born in a castle and we spend our life in the basement. And so basically that's true. We all have an opportunity to dream dreams and go out and study and read and become somebody and do something in the world, and realize the potential for wonderful knowledge that the earth holds, and all the ancient civilizations of what they left us. And so I just try and agitate the people to look up what you're doing, look at how the world works. And it's true It's been said a long time ago, but it is true, to know the truth and it will set you free. Because that's in fact what happens when you finally see through the deceptions of this world and begin to see the real life and what's really going on and who you really are and what we're, and where the earth is in reality to the universe, etc. All of a sudden you begin to appreciate who you are and your life and what it means and where we're going with life, etc. So to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that's what I've been trying to do for so many years, is just call people's attention to the truth. And the truth is that so many people do not know where things come from, the etymology of words, the history of concepts and ideas, and where governments come from, where does royalty come from? I mean, we like to talk about royalty. What is royalty? Who in the world came up with the concept of royalty? Where somebody, one of us humans, can ride in gold chariots and have millions and millions of dollars and flip our cigarette ashes off on the children chariot, while the rest of the people are starving and trying to stay alive. Royalty? What kind of an obscenity is that idea of royalty? We're all humans. Nobody's royal. And then you got the elites who believe they own us and they own our bodies, and they've actually constructed our commercial system based on this buying and selling of humans. So again, I'm not trying to belittle the world we live in. I'm trying to wake people up to the fact that if you're going to live here, you might as well use your mind and start reading and studying and waking up to the reality of the world in which you live. And you'll protect yourself when you do that, because knowledge is power.
So Jordan,
that's my field.
Thank you. Do you want to talk about, what happened with Manly P. Hall's work? I think that he gave you his work, and then it seemed to have been burned in that fire. I don't know if you salvaged anything. Can you tell us the status on that?
Sure. A few years back, and I was totally homeless, penniless and homeless, with nothing, and I was living with a friend. He let me have a room in his house, and then his home sold, and so he had to move. Well, that means I have to move. Well, at the time, it was a very bad timing for me because I had no place to go and no money and no nothing. And so I had a friend in Panama who was a businessman in Panama that I've known, and so he was calling and asking me how, what's going on, how are you doing? And so I told him, well, I've got to find a place to live, and I don't have any money, any place to go, but I got to find a place to live. And he suggested, well, why don't you come live with me? I have an extra couple of bedrooms, and I'm retired. Why don't you just come live with me and do your work down here? Well, I decided that sounded better than sleeping under a bridge. So I packed up what few things I had. And one thing I did have that was most important was Manly P. Hall, the great philosopher. What a dear, wonderful man he was. And he gave me, when he passed away, he willed me all of his journals, all of his research journals. I had boxes and boxes of all of his personal research journals that he would write everything in as he was going through life and learning. And so he left it to me. And I was shocked when I found out that, that Obadiah, the president of the university, called me and said, Mr. Hall left you something in his will. And I said, what was it? And he said, you come get it. So I did. I drove up from San Diego, and I found out there was boxes and boxes of all of Manly P. Hall's research, all of his personal stuff. So I really held on to that because that was very valuable. And I've had offers from people to buy all of that from me, and they would pay very big money. to have the complete works of Manly P. Hall. Well, so when I went down, I decided to go down and stay with this friend of mine in the country of Panama. And he had a very nice place, a very nice condo, and he was very, very pleasant, and it was a very nice place. And so I naturally shipped all of my belongings, everything I owned in the world, I shipped down to Panama. And it took about 6 weeks for it to get down there because it was going by ocean ship. And so the morning that it was supposed to be delivered, we had gotten a phone call the day before. It said, tomorrow morning, your packages will be delivered. They're here. So the next morning, about 9 o'clock, we get a phone call and said that the area on the dock, the loading dock at the shipping place, caught on fire. And all of my stuff was totally destroyed. It's all gone. And so
Jordan, I want to ask you something about that. Is it possible that the CIA or somebody removed the Manly P. Hall stuff before the fire happened?
That's exactly what happened. There's no doubt in my mind at all. Somebody knew I was there, and they knew what I had, and they wanted to make sure that whatever it is I have is burned to the ground, all of it. And so the one thing I did do by accident was I had like a 4 terabyte external hard drive of all of my work, all of my videos, all of my research work over the years, and all the pictures, everything I've been doing. That's 4,000 gigs. I have 4 terabytes of all of my work, and so I had it on a big 4 terabyte external hard drive. And so I made a backup of that. So now I got 2 4 terabyte just cram filled with all my work. But when I came to, when I went to Panama the first time, I put those 2 4 terabytes in a little case, and I carried them on the plane with me. And so when my stuff got totally destroyed, and I think it was probably Mossad, that's my feeling. And I have a very good reason for thinking Mossad, very good reason. But I think it was the Mossad that wanted to make sure that everything I owned in the world was destroyed, period. So I'll be out of business. But happily, I brought those 2, big terabyte, big hard drive. So practically, with the exception of Manly P. Hall's material and a couple of books in particular, I had everything that was in all my boxes on the hard drive. So at least I had that.
Right.
And so I turned around after that happened. I was devastated. So then I was talking to some people back home in Los Angeles, and they decided they had a place for me. And so it was decided that I would go back to Los Angeles. But I'm going back with nothing but my hard drive. And so that's what happened. All of my work was all destroyed because somebody knew that I was in town, and somebody knows who I am and what I do. And they wanted to make sure anything I own on the earth, burn it all, destroy it. So I've had that happen to me at least 5 times in my life. I have had everything I own stolen or destroyed, so that I start all over again. Like every 5 or 10 years, I start all over again and amassing my work again.
Okay, Jordan, do you want to tell people what your situation is now?
Yeah, well, right now I'm living in Colorado, and it's very nice here. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm working with a company called Gaia, GAIA.com. Very simple, GAIA.com, Gaia. And Gaia is a magnificent company that's doing some extraordinary stuff that I have wanted to do. And I've talked with you about it so many times in the past, something I've really always wanted to do in my life. and that is to produce videos and bring in all of the best people that I know about, all the best speakers and researchers, and writers, and scientists, all the best of the best that are on the cutting edge, and bring them all in together into one place and have them producing their documentaries, their videos, and putting it all out there for the public to go to one place that has everybody's work, all the best of the best videos on all the best of the best people in the world. And so that's what Gaia did. I didn't know anything about it, but Gaia is a company that has brought in thousands. They've got over 8,000 documentaries done by all kinds of scientists, astronauts, physicists, UFOs, all kinds of subjects, and all the people are extremely fascinating stuff. And so they are producing all of these videos for all of these people and putting them into one place where you can just go and sit and watch the most astounding array of brilliant work by all the brilliant people around the planet. And I've always wanted to do that myself, but I never had enough. I never had enough money to do anything. But Gaia did, and Gaia is a beautiful company.
Yeah, we know that Jay Weidner is head of.
Yeah, Jay Weidner was the one who called me.
But there's a lot of controversy around Gaia, and maybe you're not familiar with the controversy.
Yeah, I am. I've heard about it. I've heard some of the stuff, but being there, and I would say, and this is important, if you're there, being there and seeing them every day, how they're working, what they're doing, as opposed to what you hear about, I am totally, I couldn't care less about what I hear. It's what I see that's happening. And I would also add this, that if you go on the web and type in my name, you will find all kinds of scurrilous, all kinds of ridicule and some of the other words I would think, but all kinds of things are being talked about me, and people calling me names that I'm a Satanist, I'm a devil worshiper, and I'm working for the government, and I'm a shrill, and all kinds of things have been said about me. Sure. And none of this is true. I'm just an old man doing what I love to do, and that is to help people grow and intellectually awaken my fellow man. But I have paid one hell of a price for it, because all kinds of people want me out of the picture. So they will call me names. They will pass rumors around which have no basis in fact at all, and I can't do anything about it. I'm just an old man doing what I do. I can't do anything about all of these people who are bad-mouthing me. So I know that when I hear people talking about me that are lies, I hear other people talking about other good people I know that are lies. So my feeling is, do whatever you're going to do, and whatever is supposed to happen will. So I leave it in the hands of God, so to speak. I just do what I want to do and do what I feel is right, and with the good people around me. And if I'm supposed to prosper, if I'm supposed to do something to help people, then it'll happen. And if I'm not supposed to, then I won't. So I just do the best I can.
How do you feel about AI?
Artificial intelligence?
Yes.
That is a very big subject. And my friend, I have a young friend that you need to have on the show, because he's an expert on AI and all kinds of strange stuff that's connected to AI that you would never believe. But AI is a very, very dangerous game that's being played by the elites of this world. That's where we got, that's a big subject. We could go into the Nazi idea of artificial intelligence, the concept of IQ tests, and why the IQ tests were so important and why they still are today in the military world. Because the elites who run this world, they want to reshape humanity completely, because they are tired of trying to keep an eye on everybody and keep the lid on everything going and be in control. Where if they can create a human race that are all in compliance, everybody is computerized, and everything is AI. They don't have to think about it anymore. The elites don't have to worry themselves to death about how they're going to control the world. Put it all into computers and let the computers run the whole world. And so now they've got the idea that artificial intelligence, I mean, Spielberg makes movies about it. All kinds of interesting ideas are now coming to the fore about how government is manipulating the human race. This whole thing about GMO and the GMO foods, but what you don't know is the GMO foods are being developed in relation to something called GMO humans. The human race is being genetically modified.
Sure.
And so they're testing the foods out on the humans now, because the people who run this planet don't care if you're going to die from what they're doing. They don't care. They just want to know, are you going to live or are you going to die? And so we'll feed them this, we'll feed them these chemicals, and feed them that chemicals, and then we'll see what happens to them. If they die, well, that's what we want to know. And so genetically modifying foods is part of it, genetically modifying the human race.
Sure. Absolutely.
Lots of stuff could be said about that.
Okay. Well, there's more than one kind of AI. I wonder if how much thought or investigation you have done. I would be curious if you have contemplated the notion that not only have we been invaded, millions of years ago by races of AI and with implants in the races, and the recent Nazca aliens had indication of this, and that they were discovered, and Gaiam got quite involved in that. But I wonder if you also think about what's going to happen when our AI interacts with alien AIs, and we've got a whole potential joining of those two. Have you ever gone down that road?
Yes, and I've been wondering about that for a long time. Who is really behind our AI to start with? Who is really ultimately the bottom line on the artificial intelligence that's being developed on the earth today? Myself, I'm totally convinced for myself, it's just my opinion, but I'm totally convinced it is extraterrestrial in origin. Sure. Here's another question. Somebody, and I was reading somewhere, or maybe I heard a lecture, but the guy was very interesting in the point he made, that if we were created by an extraterrestrial race, which I think we were, if we were created by someone from out there, so to speak, maybe they're coming back every now and then to check on us to see the progress we're making. And if that's true, then the ET races who have created us may have a legal right to own us. And therefore, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and all these other filthy, degenerate murderers who think that they own the human race and they own all the people on it, maybe they're going to have a problem in a court of law in the universe between the extraterrestrials who created us, who have a right to own us, as opposed to the scumbags we have in this world who are ripping us off and they think they own us. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a problem one day soon between the elites and the extraterrestrials who were here before and created us. So that's an idea too I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I happen to, my evidence says that actually we're created by at least 12 various ET races. And at this point, we've been genetically re-engineered through the ages. So there's even more than 12. And of course, you know about the gray human hybrid program that is going to further confuse the issue. Yes,
I am totally sure that the bottom line on that whole subject is legitimate, that we as humans were genetically altered a long time ago, and that what we call the Neanderthal man and all of these ancient hominid creatures that we're talking, we found skeletal remains of around the world, giants, etc. I am totally convinced that we have been altered many times, as you say, and today we're just the offspring of the gods. They are the ones who have created us. They are the ones who gave us life, and the people who think they own us today may have to face these extraterrestrial powers, and very possibly soon.
Well,
I
if
mean,
you listen to Clark McClelland and you've heard his story about the very tall, basically aliens possibly Anunnaki humanoid aliens on the space shuttle that he witnessed, and
and who was that?
That was Clark McClelland.
Oh,
I don't know if you guys ever talked, but he's a fascinating guy. He worked for Apollo, and he's a whistleblower, and he's quite elderly at this point. It'd be great if you guys connected with each other. He's written a lot of chapters of a very long book that he's done, revealing his experiences working in Apollo and on the secret space program, etc. But he talks about seeing what is in essence the Anunnaki giving humans orders. So I would say that the people you're talking about are taking orders, and possibly also there's an infiltration of the reptilian race. There's not just one group that's trying to run this place. They're competing groups. I wonder what you think about Sitchin. People are asking in the chat, and we do want to go to the chat for questions. One person is asking what you think about Sitchin. I know you knew him. You want to talk about his material and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I know some things about. I know quite a bit about Zecharia Sitchin because, first of all, I was in business with Zecharia Sitchin. I gave him a large sum of money to sign a contract with me one night in San Diego. I brought him and his wife out from New York, and we went out to dinner, about 10 people. We all went out to dinner, and the idea for having him come to visit us, him and his wife, was I had a business deal to talk to him about. And so he came out, and we sat and had dinner, and then I give him the proposition that I said, Zachariah, I'd like for you to sign a contract with me, because what I want to do is I'd like to send you to 7 different countries. And each country, you can do whatever you want. You go to any museums or go wherever you want to go and do what you do on your research. And I will have camera people and lighting people, etc. And they'll just follow you around wherever you go and videotape you doing the kind of research you do. And the ultimate idea, of course, is to ultimately sell 13 one-hour television series on your work, on who you are, and the world gets to see where you go and how you're doing your research, etc. And so talking with him, he said, I'm agreeable. Yeah, that's fine. So I then gave him a substantial amount of money and put the contract in front of him. And he signed it. And so we sent him. I didn't do it with my money. I didn't have anything, but I was working with a company in which I had some sway over what projects they would do. And so we decided to send Zecharia Sitchin to 7 countries. And we did. We sent him to 5. And we were almost through, except the person who was in charge of the company at the last minute decided they didn't want to do it anymore. So they cut off the money and they cut off the financing. So we cut off the project. And so Zachariah kept all of the footage that we had sent him to 5 countries. It was all done, but he kept the footage because that was in the contract. If we don't finish the project as stated, then he keeps everything that has been collected. So he did.
Wow. And
so I know a lot about Zachariah, and all I could say is that there's more to Zecharia Sitchin than meets the eye.
Well, you have said on my, I think in my conference and to me, and I think it's known at this point, he's obviously not alive anymore, that he was getting downloads he claimed from Inky, and that's what he wrote into his books. A lot of people question his information. Do you think that his information from what he thought was Enki is accurate?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Because basically that's what I also knew, is that he was getting his information from somewhere, and he said that he was picked to do this work, and that he mentioned to me, this was up in Portland, Oregon. He was speaking at a conference up there, and I was with him. And he mentioned to me, he said, but they didn't just pick me off the street. They didn't just pick somebody off the street. They picked me because I have spent my whole life in that area of the world. I know the culture, I know the people, and I know the language, and I've studied all the ancient script. And so it was my whole life's work. So it's not as if they were just picking somebody to do something.
Well,
they picked me because...
Do you think he sold out to the Illuminati? Because a lot of people seem to think that he was working for them and that he was maybe seeding some disinfo into his work. I'm not convinced of that, but a lot of people seem to like to say that.
I know that he was well known in government circles. I'll say that. He was well known in high government circles.
Sure.
For who he was and what he was doing. But I also know that those high government circles were well aware of him because they felt he was very legitimate. He was not a crackpot just writing books. The government felt he was very legitimate, and the things he was talking about, he knew, and he had somehow or another firsthand information about a lot of stuff that the Sumerians were into that the government didn't know. And so the government felt he was very legitimate. Well, so do I. I felt he was very legitimate, and that's why I wanted to be in business with him and help him to promote him. So
right.
Zechariah was very, very interesting man, but I've heard from people who were with him back east when he was actually invited by the U.S. government alphabet agency, whatever it was, one of those agencies back there, and they would have meetings. I was told that these something like CIA, NSA, or the Defense Intelligence, one of these agencies was given the task to interview people. They would call them up and bring them up to Washington, D.C. to be questioned and interviewed as to what they were hearing, because the government felt these individuals were very legitimate. And so Zechariah Sitchin was one of them. They would call him and invite him to come up, and if you're invited, you go. And so he was invited to go and tell them, the military officers in charge, what do you really know? And what are you doing? Who are you talking to? And what's going on here? Talk to us. Tell us what's going on here from your perspective. And then they would go to other people who they felt that were very legitimate and ask them the same questions. So the government was very interested in what Zechariah was doing, because they knew that a lot of his material, he wasn't just dreaming it up. He knew something, and they knew he knew it. And so that's why he was always very sought after by government. And so I know that government they knew who he was, and but that's
okay.
That's all I feel qualified to talk about.
All right. Now, do you mind if we go to the chat, because we did say that we were going to take questions from them? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So we've
that
got.
That doesn't mean I'm going to know anything. That doesn't mean I'll have the correct answer, but I'd be happy to try.
All right. There's a whole lot going on here. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll through this. I guess I'm just going to grab what's here. Any thoughts on Earth changes? Somebody wants to know.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that the Earth is getting ready to do some horrible things. I mean, I'm hearing it all the time from people on the inside. the Earth itself is doing something, and you know, and I hate to even bring these things up because everybody lives with them every day anyway. But there are some very serious things happening right now on the Earth, not the least of which is Fukushima, which has poisoned the Pacific, and all of that's blowing, you know, west, and it's coming to us. And I was reading an article that said that milk was being poured down the drain, poured down and got rid of in on the East Coast because there's so much radioactivity. The radioactivity in the milk is so bad they're just having to dump the milk, and they're saying that the biggest part of that is all coming from Fukushima. Well, logic alone would tell you if the East Coast of America is so polluted with radioactivity that they're having to dump food in the milk. Well, what does that tell you about California? What does that tell you about San Francisco and the west of the United States? And so, you know, there's one problem right there. Then you got others. You got other what do you call it? The rim of the Pacific Rim.
Right. The volcanism.
Yeah, and volcanoes and God knows all kinds of stuff is happening right now. And not only add to that, the U.S. military and Russian military with their HARP and all of that high-tech science that they stole from Nikola Tesla to manipulate weather. And they're doing it. They're manipulating weather all over the world right now. And they're playing with it like a game. So yeah. I think the Earth and time is catching up with the human race. And very soon, we're going to come face to face with a world that we are not prepared to deal with. And it's going to be horrible because there are millions and millions of people that are not going to be able to deal with what's coming.
And okay, well, Jordan, along those lines, are you familiar with the notion that we've moved into the fourth dimension, that we're not just 3D at this point, and that things are materializing as a result much quicker? And you no sooner think something than it manifests and some kinds of dynamics.
I have a gut feeling about that there may be something to that. Yeah, because we as humans on the whole earth are actually experiencing things as a human family that we never did before because we were always, you know, isolated. But with the coming of the advent of television and radio, and then the computers, and now today, you know, all over the world, people doing radio shows and television shows. I think the whole world is beginning to now come together and realize that something is happening on the earth to all of us, and something bad is happening because we have what, 7.5 to 8 billion people on the earth, and we only have enough food for stored, you know, for a few days. The best governments in the world only have food stored for a few days. My God, what would happen if we had a terrible event in California or in New York or something like that? So I know that there's tragedies that are coming. There's no doubt in my mind about it. I'm like everybody else. I just try and do what I do and live the way I live and live at peace, because I know that I feel that we're living on borrowed time. Because I've seen terrible catastrophes in my lifetime. I've been to about 7 or 8 major earthquakes in Los Angeles, big ones. I've been through 6 or 7 major hurricanes in Florida, and I mean big ones. And I've seen all kinds of other tragedies happening on the earth. And so I just know that we as humans, we're going through a period of time now in humanity that we're starting to wake up to all kinds of technology that's been around us for thousands, if not millions of years. And I think we are also being watched and guided by extraterrestrials. That's my view. I think extraterrestrials play a big part in the destiny of our human race. Right. They know who we are. They know how to pull our strings. They know how to get us to do what they want. And so I think governments, military, all the big institutions that control mankind are in the hands of extraterrestrials. That's what I think.
All right. Someone, sorry, but we've got a lot of questions. I want to try to get them in. I know we don't have a lot of time here with you. So if you don't mind, someone is asking about the Temple of Set. And I think that relates to Michael Aquino. And some people feel that he was responsible for the death of Max Spears. In case you're familiar with Max Spears, I don't know if you are. But do you have anything to say about the Temple of Set?
No, the only thing I would say, and it's just my personal opinion, I'd stay as far away from that organization as you could possibly get. I'd stay as far away from that thing. It's like a Ouija board in my mind. A Ouija board is something I would never get near. I don't want nothing to do with a Ouija board. Why? Because I know something about it that a lot of people don't know. And so Temple of Set is another thing I know something about enough that I would never go near it. Have nothing to do with it.
All right. Now I'm going to go through this and try. I'm trying to scroll. It's not so easy. Somebody wants to talk about cloning centers. I think Donald Marshall. I don't know if you've heard that guy's name. He's somebody who reports on cloning a lot in Hollywood specifically. But do you want to say anything about cloning centers?
Yeah, the first time I ever was brought face to face with the idea of cloning was a profoundly interesting movie many years ago called The Resurrection of Zachary Wheeler. If you can find it, get it, because it's just a phenomenal movie. The Resurrection of Zachary Wheeler. And it talks about how the U.S. government is cloning people, important people run for office. They get into office, and then they are quietly, gotten rid of, and their DNA is put into these somas, these creatures that are like a human, but they have no personality, etc. And then they develop the features of the person who won the election, and so now they own those people in the world that supposedly the presidents and all the big shots are all clones. Well, that was a movie, The Resurrection of Zachary Wheeler, and it's very well done.
Well, do you know
I
this
wouldn't
guy?
be surprised if there was something to that.
I think his name is, if I have the name right, Peter Beater, something like that.
Yeah.
And he has very good information, and he's one of the early guys. He was a lot like you. He sure was. And he posted, I think he was talking back in the day about Russia actually cloning leaders and putting them on an island somewhere in Russia.
I followed his work many years ago, back in the early 60s.
Right.
I was following his work and I had all of his video, his audio
stuff.
Tapes is separate. And he was very brilliant guy. And he was talking a lot about cloning people too. Okay. I think there is something to the fact of people being cloned, because I know the technology is there, and I know that the technology, if it's there, the government will use it.
Yeah,
and it's not even government; it's the criminals behind the government. It's the criminals in the government. It's not the government itself; it's the criminals in it. So.
Okay, I think someone in the chat wants to know if you have anything to say about Tom DeLonge. Do you know who he is?
I know of him, but I don't know that much about him.
Okay.
No, I'll just pass on that one.
All right. And it is hard because the chat is going so fast that I can barely. What that means is we've got a very large audience, Jordan, just so you know, and people are asking questions like crazy. I'm trying to stop. I can't, if you can, hold off in the chat, for a moment so I can actually get it to freeze. Military organized gang stalking, someone wants to ask. Know anything about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say this, that can you imagine how much money it would cost you to finance Steven Spielberg in a movie like E.T. or one of those Close Encounters movies? How much it would cost to finance Steven Spielberg to do a movie like that? A lot of money. Well, Steven Spielberg did a 19 hours of a television series, 19 hours of Steven Spielberg. Did 19 hours on the subject of Taken, Taken, Taken.
Oh yeah, Taken's a great movie. It's a great series. Yes. Yeah.
And in it, it shows you, Spielberg was showing you that there's a whole world of extraterrestrial technology, knowledge, and all kinds of strange stuff that's being worked on the human family, that worked on the human race by extraterrestrials in our military establishment. And there was one-on-one working with each other, military with the extraterrestrials. Well, since then, we've heard all kinds of stories, and I know you have, all kinds of stories about the extraterrestrials that are working within the U.S. government. And so when it comes to high technology and military stuff dealing with extraterrestrial presence, there's no doubt in my mind there's a world of knowledge there that we haven't been privy to know about. And like George Carlin says, it's people who are into that kind of knowledge. It's a big club and you ain't in it. And so I thought to myself, yep, that's true. It's a big club around the world of people who know what's going on this earth and the extraterrestrial connection to our lives and our world that we live in. But they're not telling us. And there's reasons why they're not telling us. But soon it looks like they're going to have to at least say something, because today it's becoming overwhelmingly obvious that too many people are seeing and experiencing too many things to be by chance. So it's a big subject, and I'm not an authority on it, but I know a lot about it, and I've heard lots and lots of people. And as a matter of fact, I remember, well, maybe we should go on with other questions, because what I was going to talk about take too long. So,
all right. Well, I hate to, people are going to be sort of hanging on there and wondering what you were going to say. Let me see. Somebody.
Well, all right. Let me
just
say that I'll make it quick and I'll make it short as I can. Norio Hayakawa, my Japanese friend. Norio, you remember him?
Yep, I do.
Okay. Norio was a dear friend, and Norio used to be famous for an idea he kept talking about in public and giving lectures on it. Norio used to say that he thought that there was going to be a fake alien invasion, and it's going to be fake by the powers that be in this world, going to fake an alien invasion, and it's going to frighten the whole world into joining into a one world government and one world to protect the whole human family. We've all got to join together in some kind of a United Nations operation, which is just a political ploy that they fooled you and you joined into some kind of a worldwide plot against individuality and freedom, etc. And so I was at a dinner one night in Pasadena with a lot of speakers and teachers and all kinds of people there, and he brought that subject up about his idea that it would be a fake alien invasion. And so I said, Norio, I could take the same facts that you are presenting to back your idea, and I can give you a totally different idea, a completely different story. I said, I think that it's at least possible that there is in fact going to be an alien invasion. And the governmental powers around us, they know there's going to be an invasion. And they have been given the opportunity to get us prepared for this, because the aliens don't want to just jump in on us all of a sudden out of nowhere, because it would be chaos and it's going to be a terrible event. But if they break us in over a period of time, so I'm saying, I thought maybe the aliens have been giving the powers that be over us an opportunity to prepare us for their eventual coming into our society.
Well, you know, Jordan, Jordan, actually, I mean, I appreciate that. According to my witnesses and evidence that I have, the invasion has already happened. We actually have been invaded dozens of times over history, but there is a very interesting thing happening right now, which has to do with an invasion of an artificial intelligence, a group of beings that are basically androids on the way here, according to some of my witnesses, are suddenly coming forward with this. At the same time, Elon Musk, I don't know if you know who he is, who runs SpaceX.
What was his name again?
Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah, I know the name anyway.
Yeah, he's out in public now saying that he thinks that there's going to be an invasion of AI. And if you know the D-Wave machine, that's accessing the fifth dimension, according to Geordie Rose, I don't know if you've heard of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're both saying that this is bringing in an artificial intelligence through a portal onto the planet. So in a sense, you're probably right. The only difference is when they say the word alien, they just mean non-human. They don't necessarily mean what the kinds of things we mean, which could be AI and also other kinds of beings that are not necessarily AI, but might have AI and so on. So I think you probably are on track with that. Project Bluebeam, of course, is the name for what you were referring to before. And for those interested, I did put a link to Peter Beater in the chat. He's got a lot of audio tapes that he made, that fascinating information. So if you're not familiar with him, look back in the chat and you can get the link there, and I can repost it if it went by too fast. So I think you may be correct about there's something that people are being prepared for right now. I think DeLong is, and his efforts, however sort of paltry in my view, are part of that effort to start to wake people up, and because there is something major going down and coming down in the future. One of our witnesses talked about Skynet, the Terminator, Pete Peterson, he talked about the fact that Skynet is real. The Terminator movies are real, and that is our future, that we're already there. So this is all food for thought, of course.
Well, like I said, I tend to agree that something like this on a massive scale worldwide is slowly but surely developing. And I've used the example of like when you're developing years ago, when they developed pictures, you take the negatives and you go into the dark room and you put them in the liquids and the different acids, and then slowly but surely a picture will begin to develop. You don't see it very clear, but you got a general idea about what it is. And the more you leave it in there, and the more you work with the different chemicals, the more and more crisper and cleaner the picture is. And so it's developing a picture. Well, I feel I've been watching for all these many years a developing situation coming on the earth in which the whole entire human family is going to find themselves confronted by something that we've never even dreamed possible. That we're going to be dealing with extraterrestrials on a one-to-one, face-to-face basis somewhere. And I've heard people who are in positions of government to know, they're saying that, like the Canadian defense minister talking about the aliens are planning on taking over and doing whatever it is that their agenda is, and they're going to be doing it real soon. Well, I got a gut feeling about that. I think so. I think somebody's getting ready to do something on this earth, and the political stuff that's going on is just to keep people occupied.
Yeah, I have to agree. There's a lot of nonsense out there in the political arena.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I don't know if you're listening to the chatter about what's called the FISA memo, but I think as I know, that we've been surveilled, for so many years in so many different ways, and they've been doing this surveillance of all of us through the television since the 60s, certainly. I'm sure you're familiar with all of that, right?
Yes. Yeah. I've got a subject that was really long, and we should do another show on it completely. But there was legitimate communication between astronomers and astro scientists and the extraterrestrial presence. They were communicating with each other back in the 30s, and we know that. We have records of it, that this government and scientists in the U.S. government probably around other governments too, but especially the U.S. during the 30s were in touch with and communicating with extraterrestrial sources, and they were sending, and those extraterrestrial sources were sending back messages. But the scientists in our country could not understand what those messages were. They just knew they were highly intelligent and amplified and very crisp and clean messages, but we just didn't understand the language. So I know that I am totally sure we've been watched for a long, long time. I think probably hundreds of thousands of years we've been, extraterrestrials
Well,
have been
don't they
watching
call
us.
it? Don't they call them the Watchers in the Bible? Isn't that what
That's
they call
right.
them?
Call them the Watchers, and there's also the sons of God. That's a different term completely. Sons of God in the Old Testament does not mean angels. They were not angels. They were not spirits. The sons of God were actual alien, extraterrestrial aliens who came here, and the Bible calls them the sons of God. And then that's a real subject, boy. When you get into the sons of God in the Old Testament and how they came here, the Bible says, I didn't say it, the Bible says these sons of God, these extraterrestrials came here and they saw the women were beautiful, so they started taking the women, and they had offspring. But the Bible doesn't say they had children. It's not the word that's used. They have offspring, but not children. They have something. And the females were giving birth to something, but they weren't human. And so you find out that these male creatures who were extraterrestrial were able to have sexual connection with the women, but the women would not give birth to humans because the male was not human. It was what the Hebrews called the sons of God, which is a word meaning physical, like us. And that's a whole story that we could get into, that requires some really interesting research being done on who created us.
Right.
The Bible doesn't say God created mankind. The Bible does not say God created us. Lots of people think, oh, well, God created because it's in the Bible. No, it's not in the Bible. It doesn't say that anywhere that God created man. It says God created Adam, A-D-M, just three letters, A-D-M, Adam. And so Adam was created, but not by God. And that's the whole subject we could get into later.
But to say nothing about the fact that what is the word God even? What are they referring to? And all indications are that the actual God they were talking about was probably an Anunnaki, and that gets into a whole nother matter.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They were talking about the Anunnaki, or the extraterrestrial life forms that came here, and they saw the indigenous creatures here that they call man. And then the Jews will tell you, Hebrews will tell you, that man in Hebrew is Ish, I-S-H, and God is E-L. So therefore, if you go to the Hebrew translation of the Old Testament, you should see in the Genesis 1:1, it says, in the beginning, El, because El is God in Hebrew. In the beginning, El created Ish, because he created man. But it doesn't say that. In Genesis 1:28, it says the gods, more than one. The God says, come, let us create man. And Christians will say, see, there it is, right there in Genesis 1:28, God is creating man.
In God's image.
But I'm saying that Christians will say, there is where God is creating man, in Genesis 1:28. But the rabbis will tell you, no, go back and read it correctly. It says that God said, come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Not, he's already here, but let's make him in our image. Let's make him to look like us.
And God's plural, doing a job in essence. So this is where you get into all that.
Yeah. And then later on in Genesis 3, the gods looked down on the earth and saw us that they had made. And they said, look, man has become as one of us. Adam has become as one of us. What do you mean, one of us? That's an interesting point, because if we, I don't know, I didn't write the Bible, I'm just telling you what's in it. But if there is something to this idea that the sons of God came here, they saw the women and they saw the indigenous creatures here, and they crossbreeded with them and created a new kind of creature called Adam, and that's us. Then that means, like the Bible says in Genesis 1:28, that God says, "Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness." So that means that out there in space, if there's life forms out there in the great beyond, they look like you and me. They look like humans. Mm-hmm. They look like us. Because right. Why? Because as God said, "Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness."
Right. Now, someone is asking about if you can talk about aliens, the relationship between aliens and the Masons. In a sense, you're already starting talking about that, but do you want to answer that question?
I think that the alien presence on this earth goes back, millions of years, and therefore there is no part of human society today, period, in which the aliens have not had a healthy part of the destiny of the human family, and how we group together groups and political parties and religious groups and philosophical groups. Right. There's no doubt in my mind the aliens have been misleading us and manipulating us for a long, long time. Not just Masons, but I mean all kinds of organizations, all kinds of institutions.
It gets back to the beginning of this discussion when you mentioned kings and queens, all of them supposedly getting their title from the gods.
That's right. They have a divine right.
Right, and coming also the kings of Egypt as well. So getting into that, the pharaohs. I know we've been going for a while. I promised you we wouldn't go much longer than an hour. There's one last question I want to ask. I'm grabbing from the chat, and then we should wrap this up. Someone is asking about the Da Vinci Code. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yes. This is just my considered opinion from what I know about that whole subject. I think Dan Brown is a fraud. I think I just got a horrible feeling about Dan Brown. I don't know. I haven't met him. I wouldn't want to meet him. But I don't have a very high respect or very high thinking about Dan Brown, because I think he's nothing more than an Illuminati shrill. I think he's just a front man for the secret societies of Europe. And they put him up to, like they did with Karl Marx. Karl Marx didn't write Communist Manifesto. It had nothing to do with it. And so, and there's so many other famous people who wrote these famous books, and you find out, no, they never wrote anything. So Marx didn't write Communist Manifesto, and Dan Brown didn't write anything at all. I think he's just a front man for a secret society who is promoting a particular political philosophy, and they want it to look like Dan Brown is doing it. No, I think it's the Illuminati masters. I think it's our elite. I'd like to know the connection behind Dan Brown and the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the World Communist Party and the fascist world empire. I'd like to know the real story behind Dan Brown and who he really is and where he's getting his money. Because my gut feeling is, what I know, he's just a front man who's I don't think he wrote anything. I think he's just a front man.
Well, I heard once that it's an AI that wrote those books.
Well, that makes more sense to me than anything. Yeah.
So there you go.
All I know is that Dan Brown is a phony.
I hate to say, I don't know anything about the guy, but I think on an intuitive level, I think you're very psychic and intuitive, Jordan. I have to agree with you. There's something very fishy about those books and about this particular guy and his association with them. So I agree with you on that. I think it's very interesting. and also how they sort of twisted. I think what was that, Holy Blood, Holy Grail?
Blood, Holy Grail.
Yeah,
the
that
book
was the
came
real
out back in
books.
1980, and I got it when it first came out, called Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And it was written by 3 producers at the BBC in England. The 3 producers were Bagent, Lee, and Lincoln. The 3 different television producers, and they produced a television show once every so often, once a month or whatever it was, like 60 minutes, in which they would take one subject and really delve into that one subject. And they decided to delve into occult Freemasonry in Europe, about the queen, the kings, and the princes, and all the royalty of Europe, and how they're connected behind the scenes to dark secret societies and fraternal orders and all kinds of dark criminality going on. And so they wrote a book, and it was beautifully written and very, very interesting, because they talked about Christianity and who Jesus really was and not what you thought he was. And it was called Holy Blood, Holy Grail, in which they get a big story about secret societies and all of that. You can go back and find it and read it on the web.
Yeah.
And then today we have Dan Brown coming out with the same story. And all of a sudden today, Hollywood said, oh, it's a magnificent story. And I'm saying, no, it's a ripped off story. If you just read a book, go back to 1980 and read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, same damn story. Same thing.
Right.
So don't tell me about how wonderful Dan Brown is, because I can read. And I tell you that Holy Blood, Holy Grail was the bottom line for the movie, Dan Brown's movie. And I don't think Dan Brown wrote anything. I got no respect for him at all. When I see in your face, plagiarism in your face, that's what I feel about Dan Brown. I don't like him at all.
All right. So, Jordan, before we close down here, I'd like you to tell us what can we look forward to hearing from you on Gaiam. How soon will you have your shows on Gaiam?
Well, I'm working on some new projects now, and but I have so much to do and so much I want to do. And happily, at least I have the hard drives, and so I've saved a lot of my work. And so I'm just working along and doing the best I can. But I just got here anyway, so
I see.
Okay. I just now got here to Colorado, and so I will hopefully, if the Spirit lets me continue to live, I'll be doing something in the very near future. And if you want to go to Gaia, it's an incredible place. Go on to my website. Go to Jordan Maxwell Show. And don't forget to add the word show, because my website that I own is called JordanMaxwellShow.com. And when you go there, you will see, first of all, a picture of me at Gaia, talking about Gaia and who I am and what I'm doing. And then you can join Gaia by just clicking on the picture and join Gaia. And they have over 8,000 incredible videos, and they're all on there, very, very highly polished and very nicely done. And so that's the one thing I'm doing, is working with Gaia. But also I have a research website too that you might want to know about. If you go to JordanMaxwellShow.com, you will see a little banner that says Jordan Maxwell Research website. That's another website I have that you get from my home website. And that is all of my research materials from all over the years. That's on my hard drives. I'm putting a little bit on every day. Every day we're putting a little bit more on of all my research in the past, all kinds of things, from audios, videos. There are some articles on there that are worth thousands, tens of thousands of dollars if you even knew that they even existed. But I've got some documents on there that you won't find anywhere else. Cool. That are extraordinary stuff. And so it's called a Jordan Maxwell Research website, and you can click on it and join it. But that's basically what I'm doing, is I'm working with Gaia and doing a lot of new video stuff that's coming, and it's not nowhere near it now, but it's going to be happening soon. And then I have the research society that you might want to avail yourself of. Lots of good stuff on that research society.
All right. Okay. Well, Jordan, it's great to catch up with you. We'll do it again soon. Okay. And like I said, the chat's been going crazy. You want to give an email address anywhere people can write to you, because a lot of people really like to follow your work and get in touch.
Yes, just go to my website. It's right there. My email and all my all my information is right there. And do email me. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to know if people are hearing me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay,
Sure.
thanks again, everyone, for watching. And Jordan, I'm going to let you go and have a great night, okay?
Thank you. And always a pleasure. And let's do it again.
Okay, great. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so let's see if I can get this going here. I wanted to let people know that I'm doing a show with Maria Wheatley on Friday. That would be at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and we're going to be talking about our upcoming tour of Egypt. And so if you're interested, we do need a certain minimum number of people. I know a lot of people seem to be afraid to go to Egypt, but it's very safe in my view. Of course, I can't predict anything and everything that would happen there, but it's an amazing place. And I've led a tour there back in 2012. This is another opportunity to do this, and we've got some fascinating people joining us. I've invited some behind the scenes individuals. Not sure if they're going to join us or not. That's still up in the air, but we do have a deadline, March 15th, when we need the final funds. All of the information is on the events tab on my website. So you can go there and see about our Egypt trip, see the itinerary, and then tune in on Friday, and Maria and I will be talking some more about that. So if you haven't seen my release of sort of co-release, helping the White Hats get the word out on the trading programs and how they fund the secret government, that has gone out to the world from the White Hats website. So all the information is also linked on my site. Actually, I'm in the process of pasting the entire information there as well, so that people that are going to, I think it's called Scribnid or whatever, and also the White Hats, to see the documents, to see the proof of what are called trading programs. And we're talking about, from what I understand, amounts in the excess of $27,000 trillion, and that's just the beginning. That's just one program with one guy, and they've been doing this since World War II. It's run by the government. It's run by the Federal Reserve, and all of the information is on the White Hats website. Interestingly enough, this has gone out to all of the name people in our sector, and no one is responding. No one is talking about it. No one is investigating it. As far as we know, nobody's coming forward. And the individuals out there that are in positions where they should be in the mainstream, even doing financial investigation, that includes people like Benjamin Fulford, Alex Jones, pundits out there, Jason Goodman, you name it, people that are getting on the circuit. Jimmy Church was sent it, Catherine Austin Fitts, Karen Hudis. This is real documentation that has never been seen before, that the White Hats are risking their lives to get out there. So I just want to make a heads up and encourage you to read the information, take a look at what is funding our secret government, our deep state, and our secret space program, and has been for millions of years, not millions, thousands, and or hundreds. And actually want to say that this information is groundbreaking. So if you want to take the information, I've tweeted it, I Facebooked it, it's all out there. And if you aren't already on my Facebook or on my Twitter, I encourage you to do so. And if you want to know how I am or what's going on with Camelot, that's where you go to get that information. I simply don't have time to answer all the individual emails I get. I apologize for that. It's just not humanly possible to do that and do my work at the same time. Camelot, however, does need your donations to continue. I need to pay my webmaster every week. I need to pay my rent and my car, which has had some car trouble. And I want to thank those people who have donated to me recently. I really appreciate it. We cannot continue to do this on a pro bono effort forever without funding. And it's really you guys who keep us going. So if you want to see more shows and you like what you see, please do consider donating. And the donate button is very obvious on my website. So thank you for watching and have a great night. And I'll see you on Friday unless something happens. And my Thursday night show was canceled because of the guest who wasn't able to make it. So we've got the Friday show. But if someone shows up, then I might be on again tomorrow night, depending on what happens. So thanks again for watching and for supporting Project Camelot. Take care. Bye-bye.